All right. So in today's webinar, we're going to be talking about Nonprofit Easy version 2. We're going to be doing a demo of it and going through all the various functionality of it, just kind of a overview to kind of give you a feel for what we got in here. And at the end, we're going to talk about migrating people from version 1 to version 2. So if you have any questions along the way, feel free to ask. If it's a migration question, it will be held until the end. And no worries, we'll make sure to get you all squared away then. No one will leave here without a question, without their questions answered. So today joining me is Missy Singh. Some of you may already know her, so she'll be talking at the end about the migration process and maybe popping in and out if she wants to throughout. Talk about anything that might need to be mentioned. Otherwise, you get to hear my voice for a little while now. So let's go ahead and get started. So here we are starting out on the dashboard. So I've now logged into our new system. You can notice that things look a bit different, and we'll go ahead and talk a little about those differences as we go along and some of the differences in features and functionality as well. So here on the dashboard, we already have differences, as you can see. But one of the cool differences here is that we can actually customize this dashboard. So one thing we can actually do is we can change what time frames these various graphs are looking at. So here I've decided, I'm going to look at 2014 and 2015. And go ahead and close it out. This button here lets us do the editing. You can tell I was doing a lot of modifying here. You can also say what widgets you're seeing and how you see them and where. So we can configure the dashboard as well to say what we're seeing. We can make things wider and more narrow as needed, or taller, or even outright remove one of the widgets. So there's something already to start us off. So I'm going to say I'm done. From here, we can go ahead and start looking at the system. So one of my favorite things to show off first is the quick add menus. So the first and foremost is contact search. So I can go here and say, show me all the Metzlers in the system. Enter. And it's going to run a quick search and pull me up all the Metzlers. So I got a lot of people in screen sharing with, so I might be a little sluggish today. So I should have about a half dozen Metzlers I've added to the system. Most of them are fake people, but you'll notice me in there too. So we got a couple of Metzlers. Here's our contact list. So that's another thing that's changed. We don't really have the contact list like we had before. You'll go ahead and run searches for the contacts you want. You might be wondering, well, what about advanced searches? Totally still possible. So if you click on the quick add, advanced search, we can go ahead and run advanced searches. We can save them. We can see recently viewed contacts, and we can do search criteria. So let's just search very quickly. The next one is the quick add menu. And so this is a great way to just do stuff quickly. Things that you do every day, multiple times a day. Add contacts, add organizations, creating an invoice, and we'll talk more about those, adding gifts and grants. So we'll come back to this menu in just a second. I just want to run through here real quickly. Recently viewed contacts. So if there's a couple of contacts you've been working with back and forth, easy way to get back and forth between those records. It remembers them for you. And then next to it, we have your invoices. This will take you to your invoices, which are basically just all your transactions. So an invoice is basically just a receipt. Could also be something you send out to the client. We'll touch on that more later. The 7 means I have 7 outstanding. And then recent visits, breadcrumbs. Where have we been recently? I was recently on a search. All right, let's go back to that search. Or contacts or pages or contact merge or a few other places I might have been recently. So it's going to take me back to search. Oh wait, already I'm on search. Excuse me, contacts. That was the results I was previously looking at. So this will show me all those Metzlers again. So here's all my Metzlers again. So quick shortcuts here to get you through your day. So let's go back to our quick add menu. Add individual. Well, let's just quickly add somebody. We just get the basic details for their record. And the only 2 required fields are name, first name and last name, so nothing too fancy there. Let's call this guy James Trout. I don't know, there's a picture of a trout on a book on my desk. So James Trout put in his email, jtrout@example.com, and we can be done. We can go ahead and save and add another contact, save and close. Or save and add more information, and actually go into the Add Edit screen for the contact. So let's see how this looks. So this is what you get anytime you add a contact. So it's going to pop up in just a second. So here's our Add Edit screen. And we're going to notice a number of differences here from version 1. So some of the stuff is just the basic information, names, middle names, birthdays, nicknames, formal, informal salutations, contact source, things like that. Are they active or are they deceased? We also have the quick add for relationships, or we can go to the relationship tab and get the relationships beyond just spouses and children. Emails, including which one is the primary email. So no longer will you have to worry about it sending to a bunch of different emails. You pick which email it sends to. We can household emails, phone numbers, addresses. So we've set aside what addresses do what. Here's the mailing address, here's the billing address. We also have seasonal addresses, which will override the mailing address under the conditions you put. Temporary addresses, same idea as seasonal. And then other addresses for just stuff you want to stash in the record, but may not need for mailing. So there was a question, is there a quick add for interaction? There isn't, in the sense that it's not part of the quick add here, but it is over here on the left. So you don't have it as part of the quick add menu, but it will be over here on the left in contact records and various parts of the screen. So effectively, yes. We also have our communication preferences, which now have an option for not set. So this is the default. So now you can tell, is it just that we don't know what their preference is, or that they've actually said no? So yes, no, not set. Tags, demographic, crucial info, special comments. So a lot of that should look very familiar. So I'm not going to add anything further to this record. I'm just going to go ahead and save it. Organizations work fairly similarly. We can still track contacts against what companies or organizations they might work for or be linked to, the relationships, custom information. So custom fields still live on, and they're cooler than ever. We'll see them a little bit more in a few minutes. Oops. I shouldn't have anything in here. Yeah, so nothing in here at the moment. Documents and social media. Currently, just a place to track what social media handles they have. And then contact types. So that was just a quick way to add a contact. There are other ways to add contacts. For example, if I'm making a donation, depending on how I'm doing the donation, or some other entry into the system, and I have a name field, I can just type into that name field, and if the contact doesn't exist, I can create it right then and there. We'll see that in a little bit. I'll go ahead and create a contact. You can also have an import, so we can also import contacts now. So we've expanded on our import functionality. So if I go to the import utility, I can go ahead and pull from CSV, XLS, XLSX, I think are the 3 formats we currently work with. And the system will import contacts, first names, last names, email addresses, various different types of physical addresses, contact types, tags, all sorts of information can we now import with the import utility. If the person already exists, we can update information into their record instead of just dropping them. We'll talk about duplicate prevention, but now 2 different people can have the same email address, so that's, take it or leave it, that's now possible. We can determine whether or not we don't want to allow that with duplicate prevention and things like that. If there's a problem during this migration process as well, we can correct that problem. So that's why it says validation complete. So I could go into one of these that has a problem, maybe validation failed, and I could go ahead and edit it, fix the validations, and continue. So import got really awesome. We also have donation import and other imports of that nature coming with the future. And there's some questions about some of our integrations. I'll come back to those, but those are good questions. So what about GIFs? All right, well, we saw quickly how to add contact. Organizations aren't too different from an individual. Oops, sorry, we don't need the main menu yet. For adding GIFs, we can go ahead and use the quick add. or we can do it from a contacts record like we always could, or we could do it from an invoice, or we can do it with um, fundraising, batch gift entry, or we can, so there's a couple of different ways we can do gifts. Let's go ahead and do one from the quick add gift. Every transaction in the system creates an invoice. When it comes to gifts, for the most part, you can ignore those invoices, but it also will give you the power later on to put multiple donations on a single payment, or put a donation and membership together, things of that nature. So let's just quickly run through a donation. This is the quick add. It's got most everything you need, so it lets you add a donation real quick. Let's say, okay, it's Henry Johnson. I don't know. I have no Henry Johnson. Nothing came down. Click out. I can go ahead and add him real quick. The quick add menu comes back up. So Johnson at example.com. You always notice I use example.com if you ever need a fake email that you can always be safe that won't actually send to somebody. So, a little trivia there. So, add people, funds, these were the donation names in version 1. They continue on. So, he's donating to art supplies. Source, so this is new. We can now say where the donation came from. So, there's a lot of things we can track about a donation now. So, we can say by what channel did it come in, the source. What is the donation? It's an art supplies donation. It's a it is a scholarship fund donation. What is it being restricted to, if anything? Program. What prompted someone to donate? Campaign. Is it attached to an event? We also get tribute. So this starts bringing us also into another topic of donation acknowledgement. So with tributes now, when I say my tribute in memory, on behalf, in honor of, I will select my contact or put name only. So let's say this is on behalf of Bob Plum or Bob Awesome. I can say, you know what? I want to send a card to Bob Awesome and let him know that Henry Johnson made this donation on behalf of him. So now I can send a tribute card, select the template for that tribute card. All of our templates are managed in one spot, and I'll show you that. We say who we're going to send it to from either one of our contacts, or enter in the information if we don't want to actually add them. So now we have the possibility, in addition to donation acknowledgement, so we're just going to send it to Bob, awesome, to actually send tribute cards. So cool stuff there. Soft credit as always, and mode of payment. Since I'm doing this with the quick add, I do everything on this screen. If I'd done it through another mechanism, I would have done it actually through a different screen, which would have still had all the information, just would have provided you the option to tack it on to more invoice information. So mode of payment, check, credit card, all that fun stuff. With credit card, if I've set up my payment processor, I can go ahead and process the card. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say maybe it was processed offline. On what date did I process it? What is today? Today is the 16th. So I need to fix that. Reference number and amount. Let's say it was $500. Ta-da! I then could go add more information, which will take me to the invoice. I could save and add new and add another quick donation. I could save and close. Now I'm done. Or I can go into sending the acknowledgement. So I'm going to go ahead and save and add more information just to show you what an invoice looks like. And then we'll move along. Now, one more thing we can do with donations. You don't have to do this, I just happen to have it set up, is premiums, gifts, things you give folk for them making that donation. So in this case, I have anybody who gives me a $500 donation or more gets a teapot, because tea is awesome. And I can choose not to have that premium. I could keep the premium. I can say, yes, we're going to get a teapot. There might be multiple rules that kick in. How many teapots, so on and so forth. Apply. It's then going to tuck away that premium for later, and we'll be able to track under the main menu premiums, whether or not we've sent it. So this is what an invoice looks like. If you do go to the invoice, we can go ahead and add other items to this invoice, like events and memberships, other items, for example, so merchandising fee for service type invoice items. And one thing we can do with custom data sets now is we can hook them into a gift. So now I can actually have a field that I've customly created called corporate match. Is this a corporate match? Is this matching a corporate donation of some sort? Or is this a corporate donation matching something? Just something I tossed together. And I can say, yeah, you know what, this is, or no, it's not. I can make it required, not required, whatever I want to. And this is actually a custom field I've created. So cool things there. I'm going to go ahead and save this out. And now I have an invoice. I can print this invoice out. I can send it to them for their receipts. I can print it out for my accountant's receipts, whatever I need to do with it. Otherwise, I'm now done with it. With these invoices, since I seem to be on invoices, I can see my paid, my unpaid, my partially paid, for what contacts. So I could say, you know what, I want to see all of Arjun Metzler's invoices. He may only be 8 months old, well, 8.5, but apparently he donates a lot. So here's all his invoices, mostly donations, but a few other things as well. So I'm going to back up a little bit, and let's talk about donation acknowledgement. So donation acknowledgement is handled a bit differently in version 2. So how we did it in version 1 was you made your donation, you put in all your information, you pulled up the donation acknowledgement process, you said who you want to acknowledge, you pick your template, you do your communication preferences, and you follow through. We do it a bit differently now. What we do is we actually do all the configuration ahead of time. So we create in Manage Templates our templates for donation acknowledgement, and they're all in one place. Every template in the system that you would send out is all right here. So this is your donation acknowledgements, your tributes, your soft credit, your newsletters, your year-end thank yous, your events, membership notifications, various other communications, all right here. So we've simplified the editor, so we can add a template. So I'm just going to edit this one, and it's now based on sections. You just mouse over the sections and edit what you want. We still have placeholders, just as we did before. So now what you do in the system is you set up your templates ahead of time. You can set the system-wide default for all acknowledgements. You can override that on a per fund level. And then when you go to donation acknowledgement, you can just say, you know what, print me up everything. So I can just go into, where am I? Donation acknowledgement, send acknowledgements, and just print up everything all at once. And it's already assigned your templates. All you have to do, and then based on the person's communication preferences, it's already determined how to send it out, so you can't override that. You can also preview it if you want to. And you'll go ahead and print an email, and you're done. You don't have to go ahead and you don't have to select your templates. It's already done that for you based on your configuration. You can still print envelopes. You can then now also edit the envelope template, because that's just another template in Manage Templates, and a lot of cool stuff there. So that's donation acknowledgement in a nutshell. I'm not going to go too much into it because I got to keep us moving. So donation acknowledgement, donations. I mentioned we have batch gift entry, fairly similar to what we had in version 1, but it's a bit smoother and handles large numbers at a time because you do it in sheets of 10 basically. So nothing too fancy going on here. You create your batch, set your fields, assign it to somebody, they do the data entry, you review it, put it, save it, you're done. Pledges also work fairly similarly to version 1. We can do either pledges individually or in batch. With pledges, you'll, as in version 1, say what the size of the pledge, any contingencies, the date range it's for, the frequency, and be able to set up a schedule. If you're going to automate a pledge, then you'd set it up as a recurring donation, which still exists when you enter a donation and all that. One thing, though, that did change, and that's what I was leading us up to, is grants. Grants, I know, is really big for a lot of people. So I know I want to make sure I spend a little time on that. And we have changed how grants work. So we go to grants, and now grants is a completely separate process from pledge. That was one of the things we had, in pledge with pledges and grants early on in Nonprofit Easy. They're kind of the same thing. Well, and that resulted in grants not really being very good, as capable as they could be for recording a grant from start to finish. Well, now we record everything from start to finish. Grants are made from the ground up to track the entire grant process. So you'll add a grant, you'll put your name, the name of the grant, the grantor, what's being budgeted for, what's being requested, when did you submit it, when's it due, any documents, custom fields, interactions and tasks attached to it. And the real power is your custom fields. That lets you track anything you need to about that grant. And then you'll have that in there, and that grant will be sitting as pre-approved. And then you can come in later and say, hey, was it approved? Was it rejected? And you'll be able to keep track of both your approved and rejected grants. When a grant is rejected, then we can say there it is. The reason for rejection, we'll just go approve or reject up here. So we'll say why the grant was rejected. So this grant from Arjun Metzler was rejected because babies never ask a baby for money. Okay, that's a little silly. Or if it's approved, we can actually say how that money is being distributed. So maybe this is a multi-payment grant. They're going to pay us in a way that's going to be broken up over maybe years, months, whatever. And we can receive the payment separately. We can also say what program those payments are being associated to. So I don't have that set up here on this one, but here, let me do this, because then I can show it. Okay, but I can basically say, this payment is going to be associated to a particular program or a vendor and how much. So we can say how are our grants being distributed as well. And I have reporting that I'm working on for that. So a lot of cool things there on grants. All right, so I think that covers most of donation. I'll come back to appeals in a little bit, but let's talk events. Let's talk that next. By the way, premiums, I mentioned those earlier. This is what your premiums are. These are the rules under what conditions will a premium be warranted, and your ability to track the fulfillment of those premiums. So, okay, let's talk about grants. So, excuse me, we already talked about grants. Let's talk about events. So we have our event list, like we did with version 1. And we've got some new functionality. So grants, I keep saying grants, events to have all the functionality you expect, the ability to make the event, put the event online through Pages or WordPress plugins, the ability to set schedules, make different ticket types, put your details in there. All that stuff is still there the way you know it and love it. But there's now some new functionality. So let's take a look at the configuration level and then the other ones. So venue, host, all that's still there. Scheduling details, all that's still there. Registration types. Well, there's a new option in registration types that I want to mention. But the flow is now different. I think not a lot smoother. But I guess someone's having a superhero themed event. We now have the ability to say what happens with fees, specifically credit card fees. Do you as an organization absorb them, pass them on, or split the cost? So sometimes I've had organizations, well, what do we do about the fact that we're incurring this cost? Well, now you can pass it on, or choose to absorb it or split it. So now it's built into the system, you don't have to calculate it into the cost. So now if you sell it on the back end, the cost is $10. But if you sell it on the front end, it's now $10 and $12.99 because of the $2.99 transaction fee. It'd actually be a little higher, but because of math, but we'll ignore that. So that's one of the cool things now with registrations. With membership, we also have a members only option and availability and things like that, as well as pricing on tickets. So that's now there as well. So you can put event tickets online and say this is a members only ticket. So you can also do members only pricing. So new cool functionality there. It will require a login, so you have to know they're a member, but I figured I mentioned that. And then settings, everything here is familiar here, but you may notice that we now have by email invite only. So that takes us to the fact of the new functionality for events. So we'll get to that invite, but we'll start here at the top. And then we'll, I think from here, move into a little bit of membership and then communications, which will get to the questions I have on standby. So here's the new dashboard. One thing you'll notice is that we can now track expenses. So part of the financials module is the ability to create expense groups and expense items. So you can track expenses specifically for events and a few other things, and basically see how things are doing. So let's start here at the top and work our way down. We can still configure our registration form, waitlist, image gallery, say who our sponsors are, other items. We can customize our ticket within the event, banners, notes, placeholders, so I can hide stuff if I want to, put in more notes and images. We also have invites. I mentioned those. So we can say, you know, this event's not going online, but we can send an email to our contacts, some set of contacts, and say, hey, come register for this event. And through that email, they can register, but nobody but them will have access to registration. So private events are now possible through email invite with version 2. I'm getting a lot of... Okay, continuing on. So that's invites. Event documents, still possible. Track expenses, I mentioned this. We now have the option to say, you know what are our expenses? So we create our categories. So we have venue expenses, perhaps. We could say, you know what, we paid this much for this much for that. So we've spent $200 on the facility, and we spent $100 on renting the tables, and who'd we spend that, who'd we give that money to? So we can track the vendors as well. Save. This will now show on our dashboard for the event. So we now know, hey, we're $300 in the red. And as people pay, we will be able to track expenses and income. One of the cool things about expense items, we can do a bulk amount like you just saw me do. We can do percentages of, say, the income. So maybe we have to give a percentage of the income to a third party. Maybe they hosted the event, some deal maybe, I don't know. And we can do a per person, per item cost. So we might have a base price for our catering plus a per person cost. So for everybody who registers, maybe $12 gets added on to our costs, and it'll automatically track that. So pretty cool. So that's track expenses. And then lastly, notifications, basically the ability to email our registrants and our attendees. This already exists in version 1, but we just made it a bit more formalized and honestly pretty cool. And with all of our invites, our notifications, our newsletters, which I'll mention in a minute, we can now track how many people opened it, how many bounces, how many were sent, how many people clicks, unsubscribed, how many of the people who we sent invites to registered versus declined versus not responded. So we now actually have, with our communications, statistics and reporting and such. Okay. Um, so from here, let's talk a little bit about membership. It's not been fully released yet, but it's looking pretty good. So you saw a little of what we had. We now have members only options for, say, events. We can also track the benefits and benefit fulfillment, just like we could do for premiums. Batch renewal is there, and the ability to make membership levels. We have the ability, as always, to make single and group. We're going to have a corporate membership type and a few other things like that. So unfortunately, I don't have them quite available to me yet in my system, but it's going to be pretty cool. So everything you expect and love for membership in V1, plus some new options, as you can understand. And okay, so that's just a quick mention of membership. I totally forgot to mention something, configuration. It's kind of important. So one thing that and we hadn't going in, that was going in version 1 was configuration was kind of everywhere. You configure events here, you configure your donation types here, your membership types there, this there, that there. So now we have all those configurations in one spot. So if you just go to the main menu configurations, it's all here. So no longer do you have to go here, there, everywhere, and then have the configuration menu. Nope, it's all right here. So anything that adds a system option, you'll find here. Anything that modifies system behavior, you'll find under settings. Anything else that's actually adding something to someone's record will be under the appropriate area. Okay. All right, so I'm going to start moving into communications, which is going to start addressing some of these questions that have been popping up in the chat that I have not been ignoring. I've just been choosing not to answer quite yet. There's a difference. So the question is, so these already actually got answered by Missy in the chat, but I'll answer them for all. Is there going to be Wufoo integration and MailChimp? So I'll get these two off out of the way real quick. So integrations, MailChimp, already present, works almost exactly the same as version 1. Basically lets you replace the newsletter functionality in the system with MailChimp. Someone also asked a question of whether or not the statistics available in the system are the same as MailChimp. Actually, I think they just about are. We're using Mandrill as our backend for handling emails now, and it's basically the same backend that MailChimp uses. It's really nice, really slick, and I haven't actually sent anything out through MailChimp, so I can't speak to it directly, but I'm fairly certain that the statistics are about the same now. They might have some stuff we don't, but generally speaking, I'm fairly certain we've got everything. No, they don't got anything we don't got? Okay. No? MailChimp? Okay, I guess they still got a few things we don't got, but we got a lot more than we did. So depends. Um, so yeah, Mandrill is not what is used on version 1, just so people know. It's smtp.com. It's just a different backend, not the same thing. So it's a completely different backend and a lot better. So, I'm going to ask one more question I got here. A little off topic. Can it be opened in 2 tabs in one browser? Officially, we don't encourage that. Because they're still sitting in the same browser space. I've yet to have a problem with that, but I would still not recommend it. I myself use 2 different browsers. I have it open in Firefox and once in Chrome. So we don't recommend it. So that's going to be my official answer on that one. Okay, so I'm going to bring us back from the questions. So I think I got them all. Cool. Oh, and the last one was Wufoo. And as Missy said, custom form builder will be integrated towards the end of the year. It will not be Wufoo. It will be something else, possibly our own in-house brew. But we'll get more details for you for that as we get closer. But there will be a form builder capability. So, all right, so let's talk about quick communications. So communications and reports is actually one place where things kind of got a little hazy in version 1, because a lot of what we did now in communications used to be done with reports in v1. So let's talk about those things as well. So here we have communications. First thing we have up, labels and letters, built-in mail merge. No longer will you need to pull a report, do a mail merge, export to Excel and do a mail merge. You can do it right here from within the system. You'll run your custom report. Excuse me, not your custom report. You'll basically run an advanced search, and the results of that advanced search will get pushed into a template that you've created, which will have placeholders, and that you can print up in either a Word document, PDF, or both. So built-in mail merge for you. No longer will you have to be exporting things and doing it outside the system. This was greatly requested, and here it is. It's actually pretty cool. I've used it a couple times. It's pretty nifty. So from there, we have send acknowledgement and year-end thank yous. These both existed in version 1, but they're a bit different now in version 2. I already talked about sending end of year sending acknowledgements, that you basically set everything up ahead of time and just print them out after you enter your donation. So not too much more to be sent here. Email and printing options are the same, but now you can also edit your envelope. So primary, tribute cards. You can also download the data and do a mail merge if you wanted to. Okay. Year-end thank you, much the same as version 1. You basically just select your year and select your template and pull them up. You can also whittle down the group and only send it to certain people if you wanted to as well using searches. This should look very familiar to your labels and letters and to what we're about to see in newsletter. They're all fairly similarly processed. And then newsletters, by default, will send to everybody possibly capable of receiving that newsletter. So let's pull up a saved only one. Come join us. I see questions. I will get to them. So your name, your information, category. No longer is there a category called uncategorized that you can't get rid of. You create all your categories. And then you select your recipients. By default, you can do nothing, and it will go to every contact possibly capable of receiving this category and type of newsletter. For me, 11 people, but I can use search criteria to narrow it down. So, and then send it, schedule it, whatever you need to do. So, right. So that's newsletters. They're going to be using templates, just like everything uses templates. So you'll just create your template ahead of time with the same template mechanisms that we used for acknowledgements, though you'll have different layouts to pick from, and we'll always reviewing things. So that is one thing MailChimp, I guess, would have a little bit over us, is they may have more template options, but then you have to go outside the system. So conversation for another day, but just want to put it all out there. So I'm going to cover one more thing from communications, and then I'm going to talk about volunteers. So it's not under communications, but I consider it kind of a communications thing, and that's appeals. We keep it under fundraisers. So a lot of times what people do, what they would do with reports, is either they'd be doing a mail merge, which I'll be talking about reporting a little bit at the end, towards the end, before we switch over to Missy, and I probably should actually speed us up because we got to make sure we have enough time. Well, a lot of what people did with reports was they'd pull up a report, and that was a segment for mailing that they send to a mailing house, and then they'd have to pull up another report that was another segment, and then they'd have to make sure the people in the first segment were in the second segment, and so on and so forth. Well, we built that in. So no longer do you have to pull reports to do segmented mailing lists that you send to a mailing house. It's now built into the system into what we call appeals. So I'm going to pull up a fully finished appeal just to run through all the steps. I don't know if this is the best one, but it's the one I got. So appeals, you don't usually get the acknowledgement part till the end, let you create files, each one for a different segment, package combination, we'll talk about that in just a second, that you can send to a mailing house. They will have transaction codes and scan lines so that you can track more precisely against each piece of correspondence. We have expense groups for them, the templates for them. We create our segments with search criteria like you'd expect, but each segment will have a priority. And so if someone meets the criteria for segment 1, priority 1, they'll be in that group, and then we'll go down to segment 2, priority 2, and even if they were in, so it'll grab those people, but it will not grab anyone that was grabbed in segment 1. So we don't have to worry about people being in multiple segments. We can create suppression segments. So basically say, you know what, they might meet our other criteria, but if they meet these criteria, I absolutely don't want them. So maybe you want to drop volunteers or staff or something like that. So we have now all that segmenting built in with priorities. So basically it just filters people down through the segments, putting them in the first one that they meet the criteria for. It's really cool. And then from there, we can create packages. So a lot of times you'll just have one letter, one package that you're sending to all your people. Or maybe you have one package per segment. Or maybe you have segments that get some different combination of packages, a letter basically. So you can create your packages, say what they are, and say who gets them. So you could have, everybody's going to get the main package, and our segments are really only so that we can, kind of see what segments do better in responses. But maybe we have a test package that we want to send to a small portion of our people at random to see how it does. Put it on green paper, something like that. So, and then output, we'll have set up a template for our file, what fields we want to know, and it's going to create our files for all the combinations of segments and packages. So it can get pretty complicated, but it can also be set up pretty simply. This one is kind of a complicated end of simple, kind of medium, I guess. So, but it's up to you. This can basically do all your appeals, mass appeal needs now in one place, and in a much simpler process than trying to get multiple different reports that don't overlap. All right. So I'm sure there's more questions there. And I can think of all sorts of things I've accidentally skipped. So there was a question about the volunteer management. So let's address that. We didn't put volunteer management in version 2. What we did and will do is be using Volunteer Easy, because not everybody uses volunteer management, and we have a lot of functionality in Volunteer Easy that Nonprofit Easy just didn't have. So we're actually moving our volunteer management into Volunteer Easy, and with that itself be coming out with a new version of that product based on this platform. So it's going to be faster, sleeker, and have a lot of robust functionality. There is currently a free version of Volunteer Easy that has all the functionality that Nonprofit Easy's volunteer module had, plus a little extra, and the ability to get an upgraded version that will even give you a public portal that people can log into and sign up for volunteer opportunities. So it will be split. There is a sync. So we can take data from Volunteer Easy, push it into Nonprofit Easy, and you won't know the difference on this end. So separate product, but more functionality and a free version available. So in the end, you'll have all the functionality you need, plus more options. So I hope that answered the question about volunteer management. And yes, I will show reporting. So before we go to reporting, let's talk about public pages. So public pages continues to exist in Nonprofit Easy version 2. So it is available there for you. We've made a lot of enhancements, speed up. It is mobile responsive. As with Nonprofit Easy, you can make fundraising pages, event pages, membership pages, and configure the look and feel just as you could before. So, but it should be on. There you go. And configure look and feel, and all that. 2 templates are now available. So nice already one I made. Nothing fancy there. So public pages are available. You can modify whether or not login is required for various things. We do recommend it, but you don't need to have it anymore. So some might make some folk happy or not, depending on your point of view. So there's public pages. Another cool thing with public pages, with our fundraising pages, they tie into your funds, all right, donation names in V1. And there's a new functionality, and I saved it for now to mention, that ties into funds called Ask Arrays. It also gets used in appeals. So now, when someone goes online or in their appeal, instead of being just an open field, which you can still do, or fixed levels that are the same for everybody, which you also can still do, you can now make those levels based on someone's history. So Ask Arrays, so let's actually pull up an Ask Array configuration, can be based on someone's giving history. So we can say, you know what, I want to have 4 values based on someone's history. The first value is 75% of the highest they've ever given. The next value is the highest they've ever given. The next one's the highest given plus 25%. The next one from there is highest amount plus 100 plus 50%. So that's what you can do with Ask Arrays. You can set them as fixed or dynamic based on someone's giving history. And so those will get used on your appeals so that you can send to the mailing house values for your letter, or do a mail merge with it, do what you want with it, based on someone's history, or on public pages, is what I want, I think this is it. You can present them if they're logged in with values based on their history. So this happens to be the configuration I did for one, 75, 100, 125, 50%, 150% of their highest amount. So, and then once you set up your ask arrays, you can use the same ask array for different funds, different situations. You just have to set it up once and forget about it, basically. So it's a cool functionality. Wanted to mention it. You can set it up complicatedly, simply, however you want. We're here to help you as well. Okay, I think we're getting pretty close to done. Let me make sure I haven't forgotten anything. Let's mention duplicate prevention. You get to control what you consider a duplicate. In version 1, it was always based on email. Now you get to set what is it based on. So in my case, first name, last name, email. If those are all the same, the person is the same. So if 4 characters match of the first name, 5 of the last name, and the email match, we consider it the same person. I'm actually going to make this more restrictive and remove the character length so they have to match exactly, or less restrictive. That depends on how you look at it. And then organization, we can also look at address, save. So no more do you need to go searching for duplicates. You can set what you want to consider a duplicate and move forward. So if Eric Metzler comes in there and he uses the same email, he's the same person, or you can base it on address, so on and so forth. And also hygiene rules can help out with that as well. Similar, not duplicate prevention, it's just things to watch, the system can watch out for as you do data entry. So this is where we set up things like, hey, if they do have the same email, prompt us. Or, household issues, or verify mailing address. This should be on. Why is it off? Someone's been turning things off. So this is where we can set up Smarty Streets, which we still have an integration with, as well as US Geocoder for address verification and normalization. So there's that. And then payment gateway options. We have those as well, so we can process credit cards here. So we have Bluefin. We also have Stripe at this time. Okay, and then last but not least, reporting. We've got a lot of predefined reports built into the system. We here in support can actually start building them now. Or unless they're really complicated, then we have to go to the team. So we can help you with those predefined reports. You can take these predefined reports, you can execute them in various different modes. You can also schedule them to execute automatically later and be emailed to you. And you can copy them, modify them for your own needs, and keep them in your own collection of enhanced reports, which can be both modified reports that were predefined or ones you've built from scratch. It gets a little complicated building from scratch, so I'm not going to go into that right now, but to show you an example of what you can do with a report, I'm going to show you one that I built that I'm quite proud of for events. So you might remember that in events we can track expenses, we can track income. Well, we also have a report under events that lets us look at that. Let's look at the income. Let's look at the expenses for events. And let's compare them and have a return on investment. Well, one step further is, well, let's include gifts. So let's see, what do we make in event fees? What do we lose in expenses? And what do we make in gifts attached to this event? So we can see the full picture of this event. So let's go ahead and execute this one to give you an example of a report, what they look like. While this loads up, there's a question about mapping. We do not currently have any of that, anything that would show us on a map where people are. That said, the email statistics will show you on a map by country where your respondents are. So let me pull up everybody in. Let me do it this way. Everybody, let's just pull up every event for this year. But as for seeing like where your donors are on a map, we do not have that functionality at this time. It's kind of cool, but at the moment I don't think there's anything on the docket for that. So I'm gonna pull up a report. So what this report is going to do is pull up all my events for this year up to this point and give me my return on investment on them. And then give me a total at the bottom. So these are the kind of things we can make. So you can see we have a couple events that did not do well. We see the breakdown of income expenses, including gifts. And we can see overall this year, we're doing okay on our events and gifts attached to those events. So that's a report. Did you want me to take questions on the system in general or just pass it on to you? Okay. All right. So I'm going to pause here because I think that's a little bit about everything. Okay. All right. And before we move on to the migration portion, I'd like to pause for 5 or so minutes and see, does anybody have any questions on anything on the system? I don't want to get too in depth on the functionality, but if you have any general questions, is something there, things like that. And if I muted you, feel free to unmute yourself. Or we can use the chat dialog. No? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and pass things off to Missy, who's going to start talking about migration. And if anyone has any questions about general stuff, feel free to type them in, and then we can hit them up on the end. Yeah, so take it away, Missy. I'll get them at the end. Okay. Well, they're not migration questions, but I'll go ahead and get the questions that appear to be appearing. And then if anybody has any migration questions, Missy will still be with us. So to back up, how would you characterize the improvements in newsletter editing? Greatly simplified editor. It's the same editor that we have, like I said, for the templates. No more futzing with HTML. There's a lot less places where the HTML can get weird. So basically greatly simplified, which should help prevent all the strangeness that was coming up. Well, not all, you know what I mean? Like there was the strangeness that was coming up with newsletters editing before. And then beyond that, all the other improvements to statistics, generating the newsletters, things of that nature. Is there going to be an option for alphabetizing contact by last name? Yes, that's already there. I got that implemented. Haha, proud there. So if we now pull an advanced search, so let's pull up, let's just pull up all contacts. Let's do it that way. So I'm going to do advanced search real quick for all individuals. You now will have the option to sort by first name or last name, and the system will remember that choice between logins. So you will now get to determine if you're sorting by first or last name, and I'll show that to you right here. So I sort by first name. No, excuse me, last name. So it remembers my last test. So it's pulling up everybody in my system real quick. So it's going to be doing it by last name. Notice it is by last name. Wait, no, it's not. Okay, need to look into that. But it should be remembering. So to answer your question, yes, it'll do that. I will look into why it wasn't doing that here. Introduce is going to be awesome. Okay, alphabetize. Second to Paula's question. Okay, did you want to take the? Okay. All right. Anybody else? Any other questions about migration? Okay. Well, then I think. Oh, so if you're just going to be transitioning, so Molly, I see Molly lost sound for a little bit. So just to reiterate, for the cost, if you're just transferring basic just contact information, that will be free. All other information on a per module basis will have a charge, but we'll be keeping it as minimal as possible. So, but still good question. Um, Anybody else? Okay. So let me resume my recording. So to go back to Molly's question, because I actually had myself muted, on the cost is contact information to be migrated will be free. There will be no cost to migrate contact information. Donations, memberships, events will be migrated. There will be a minimal cost for those on a per module basis. And we'll let you know what those costs are as we get a little closer. So, yeah. Sorry, I had myself on mute.